debonair devastation of such exquisite sophistication.
A certified G.
That's me.
And a bona fide stud.
That's Jeff.
And you can't teach that.
Ladies and gentlemen.
E-T-A. Excuse the aggravation, but I'm Shane, and that's Jeff, and today we're going to be talking about, well, originally it was going to be kind of a Roman Reigns focused show, but now we're going to just be kind of doing a general state of the WWE. And Jeff,
well, mainly
I'll let you lead off.
Mainly the reason why we're changing that is because Roman Reigns is starting to grow on me. Up until now, I couldn't stand him. I thought he was terrible, but and
you didn't. Oh, you did not think he was terrible.
I didn't think he was terrible, but I didn't like him in the position he was in. I didn't like the fact that he was being force-fed when there were so many organically grown people that should have been in his spot. And to me, he comes across as boring. I've never really enjoyed his character, but over the last ever since TLC, with his viciousness and the fact that he's been as vicious as he's been, has been a very. I want to see out of Roman Reigns. I don't want to see Roman Reigns making jokes about people's coconuts. I don't want to see him making jokes about tater tots and things like that. I don't want to see John Cena light. I want to see Roman Reigns go out there and be just an ass kicker. And that's what I feel like he has been over the last couple of weeks.
Definitely. I think WWE made a huge mistake last year by basically deciding that regardless of the fact that he was out injured for 2.5 to 3 months, right around the time he should have been building up the character and the momentum to head into WrestleMania as the number one contender, that they were still going to make him the number one contender heading into WrestleMania. He just did not have that kind of gravitas that he does now, because he didn't have the experience, he didn't have the momentum, he wasn't yet used to being a singles wrestler. Now he is. And he had, well, you and I agree he was the best wrestler in WWE of 2015. I know you'd say you disagree, but I know you really agree deep in your heart. And he's continued on that momentum, and now they've actually found a way to develop that character into something people can care about. Because he isn't doing those jokes anymore. He's doing more like the Diesel 2.0 thing, where he's just, a badass that's kicking people's asses and, like raising his eyebrow a little bit and just kind of, shaking off anything that comes his way. Even this past Monday night on Raw, when he got his ass kicked by Brock Lesnar, he was laying there smiling like he was during their match at WrestleMania. Just kind of thinking, yeah, Brock kicked my ass, but I still kind of won.
Well, yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think they finally, we're a year and a half, almost 2 years later, they finally figured out what to do with Roman Reigns. And as much as you and I badmouth WWE creative, there are a couple times when they get it right. I mean, they've gotten it right with John Cena for years. And say what you will about him, his character being stale. He sells tickets. He sells merchandise. Kids love him. He is what they want him to be, and he's been phenomenal at it. They got it right with Seth Rollins.
He's not AJ Styles.
He's what? I'm sorry?
He is not AJ Styles.
That is true. Yeah, I did the phenomenal, didn't I? Anyway, and they did it with Seth Rollins too, where creative had Seth Rollins right, I felt, until he went on his massive losing streak. They've done it with Brock Lesnar. They've gotten his character right. So when they hit, they hit. Problem is there's too many misses in those hits because of just poor decisions. Decisions that I can't understand how somebody can look at that script and go, we need to go with that. Case in point, Kalisto losing.
Yeah, that was definitely something that neither one of us can understand whatsoever. Maybe we'll see something this coming week on Raw that's going to shed some light on what the hell they're doing. I still think, as I talked about in the last episode, they're probably going to build to some kind of a 2 out of 3 falls match between the two of them at Royal Rumble, which, it should be fun, but it seems kind of like a backwards way of doing it. I think the whiskey's starting to get to me a little bit, Jeff.
Well, they had my wine is too, but they had a perfect storyline writing itself. ADR as a predator, as a vicious predator, like he was with Dolph Ziggler, when Dolph Ziggler
Actually, to me, Bo Dallas looks more like the Predator than ADR does.
looks more like him, yes. Is better at it, no. I just think
Good point.
I think ADR being that vicious predator chasing the title would have been a great not only boost for him, but boost for name's escaping me here. His little coalition with the foreign
League of Nations.
League of Nations, yeah, and they I think that would have been a good boost for them to have him be that vicious predator chasing the U.S. title, and to have Kalisto be that scrappy underdog who wins. I mean, that's a tried and true story in wrestling, and those are the two people that could pull that off. And I think WWE really missed it by giving the belt back to ADR so quickly.
Well, the WWE, and this is probably another example of that, seems to, instead of giving the fans what they want, tries to decide, well, no, this isn't what you want. This is really what you want. And, we saw that happen with CM Punk. We saw that happen with Daniel Bryan. We saw it happen most recently with, like you said, trying to shove Roman Reigns down our throats when what we really wanted was either Daniel Bryan or Dean Ambrose, or at the very least Dolph Ziggler to be in that role. Right. So, and Cesaro, of course, he was building momentum, and they made the incredibly bizarre decision to stick him with Paul Heyman and have Heyman talk about Brock Lesnar rather than him. And yeah, they made so many weird decisions, over the last, especially a couple of years, 5-6 years, where it's like they have a plan in place, and regardless of what the fans think about it, they're going to go with their plan. And if CM Punk hadn't left right after the Royal Rumble in 2014, they would have done the same damn thing with Daniel Bryan and just pushed him to the side so that Dave Bautista could be the champion at leaving WrestleMania 30.
Yeah, and that's a sad state, and it kind of reminds me of the late 80s into the early to mid 90s, where wrestling really took a back seat and had some of its lowest ratings ever. And it looks like that's kind of the same type of booking that they're doing now. And when they actually did listen to the fans and give the fans what they wanted, the fans wanted Stone Cold Steve Austin. The fans wanted Mick Foley. The fans wanted Kane. They wanted this edgier style. And when Vince finally gave that to them, that's when wrestling really took off, and when wrestling had its most profitable period. And now he's gotten back to the 80s. We're not having it's no longer the cartoon era, but he's back to that not listening to what the fans want. I mean, the fans are telling him what they want. They're letting Steve Austin organically. The Rock got over organically. Mankind, Mick Foley, got over organically. These are people that became some of the biggest stars this sport has ever seen, wrestling has ever seen, and they did it organically. And he's missing out on that now, where you've got Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, who unfortunately neither one of those two are currently, wrestling, but you've also got Ambrose. Damian Sandow was another one that got and people like Cesaro, Dolph Ziggler, these are people that fans want to cheer, they want to root for, and it seems like the WWE is just pushing them down. And then you could add other people too, like Kevin Owens, Neville, and so many other people that have come up over the last 4 or 5 years from NXT that should be in better positions than they are. It just seems like the WWE is back to that, no, we think you should cheer for Hulk Hogan, not Randy Savage.
Well, at this point in time, I don't think they want anybody cheering for Hulk Hogan, but I take your point. I think that, trying to think how to phrase this, I think that WWE needs to do a better job of making something that isn't organic seem organic. if they're really going to try to push things down our throats. And I think that they've done a great job of that with Roman Reigns over the last few months. I think they built to a great moment with him at the end of TLC leading into the Raw where he won the championship, and they've done a great job continuing that momentum over. So now it seems like it's organic, even though intellectually we know they've been trying to get this to happen for the last year and a half or so. And so if they're not going to go with what the fans want, they should at least do a better job of influencing it to the point where it seems like it's something that the fans came up with on their own instead of something that the WWE had planned all along.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, if you look at Survivor Series and TLC, fans didn't just sit on their hands for Roman Reigns. They booed Roman Reigns.
Right until he started kicking Triple H's ass.
Exactly, and it was right up until that time. He won the title from Ambrose. They booed him. Sheamus came out, and there was actual cheers for Sheamus. And it was up until Triple H started getting his ass kicked that they finally were like, hey, this is the guy we've wanted all along. This is the guy who was the powerhouse of the Shield. This is the guy we cheered for. This is the guy we want. And it was nice that WWE finally listened, but the problem is it still took them 3-4 weeks before it finally clicked, because the next couple of weeks Roman Reigns comes out as John Cena Light again, making his stupid corny jokes about tater tots and coconuts. It wasn't until I'd say probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago where I actually started to see that Roman Reigns that we saw at the end of TLC again.
I don't agree with that. I think the tater tot thing started before TLC. I'm pretty sure. The coconuts thing, I don't even know what you're talking about. I remember he talking about Vince's grape boots tonight that he won the Rumble, that he won the title from Sheamus, but I think that was more or less just to get Vince to acquiesce to giving him a title shot. He was doing what Randy Orton and The Rock had done previously, which is basically goading McMahon into giving him a shot at the championship when he had no intention of doing so. And I think that's probably the last time that we saw Reigns do something like that. I mean, he's basically been, I won't say he's been a silent assassin, but he's hardly any mic time since winning the championship, and I think that's really a wise decision. Not because he's not good on the mic, because he can be, but because that way they keep him away from those kind of canned, Cena-esque, slightly humorous things, rather than letting him be the total badass that he is.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, where the point I was making is that they tried too hard to make him into the happy-go-lucky, funny John Cena guy, when he's not. He never has been, he never will be, and the only way he's ever going to get over is if he is that silent assassin type of guy that we kind of want Ryback to be. That if you look at, I mean, Steve Austin was great on the microphone, but Steve Austin also didn't make corny little jokes. And I think that's, if they're looking for someone to mold Roman Reigns after, I would have them go more towards Steve Austin and less towards John Cena. And I felt like over the last couple of weeks they're starting to go that way. Now, the way things have been lately, I don't have a whole ton of faith in WWE creative. But if they can continue building him the way that they have been over the last few weeks, I think they have a very good shot at it. And you're right, the tater tot joke did come out right before TLC.
Right. Yeah. That was just the only thing I wasn't necessarily disputing you. Just the fact that I think that they did a better shift away from, and a more smoother and a longer shift away from him being that humorous character than you seem to. I mean, I saw the change in booking basically the night after TLC, and it took you 3 or 4 weeks to see it. So whether that's because I wanted to see something that wasn't there, or because you were just too stubborn to change your opinion on him.
Well, no,
I'm not really sure.
The night after TLC, his little exchange with Stephanie McMahon made me feel like they were trying to make him Chris Jericho. He was spending too much time making fun of Stephanie and not enough time just destroying like he should have been.
But Jericho never stood there and took like 7 or 8 slaps across the face from Stephanie either.
Very good point. He stayed up on the ramp and just insulted her from the ramp. He never
had
a chance to get slapped. But it just he had that whole, okay, now let's insult the boss's daughter, and it felt more like more forced comedy that just didn't get over because he's not a comedic guy, and it kind of like Rob Van Dam, who should never do comedy. Um, it,
I actually didn't think that was that comedic. I thought he was just like insulting her,
and
which was perfectly fine with me. And then I mean, even if you didn't like him at that point, you had to respect the fact that he took all those shots from her because those were stiff ass slaps, and it looked like he was legitimately bruising after that eighth one.
well, yeah, I mean, it takes a real man to get actually hit in the face like that, but it seemed more to me like they were going for the insults. With some of the insults that he used, it seemed more like they were going for the schoolyard humor than the actual tough. I think I would have enjoyed those segments more if he maybe would have stayed up in the stands with the fans. And
I think we're getting close to it being 30 days from when that Raw aired. So I would really encourage you to go back and rewatch those segments with a critical eye because I think you'll see something differently now that you come around a little bit than what you saw
oh,
before.
and maybe you're right. Maybe when I saw it the first time, I was still upset about his the way he'd been portrayed, and it's possible. But I mean, that being said, I'm starting to come around on Roman Reigns. I still don't think he's the right man to hold the belt. The pop that Dean Ambrose got when he won the Intercontinental title, that shows me where the fans really want the belt to be, and I think he's the best. He would have been the best one to carry it. But seeing where they're at,
It's just not his time yet, brother.
no, and I know, and it's sad that it's not his time. I mean, I think he would still be a strong champion. I think that the fans want him to be champion. I don't think he would fail. I I don't think that the ratings would plummet like they're so afraid of. I think that he has a chance to be a very entertaining champion and could be the type of guy that people would actually tune in to see, depending on how they handle him. That being said, the whole conversation we're having here is how inept WWE creative is in creating those types of stars. But I think the closest thing they have to being a must-see TV would be Ambrose as champion.
And I think that will happen, but I think it won't happen until WrestleMania 33. I think what's likely to happen is that when Rollins returns, Reigns is either going to be the champion or be right there in that hunt, and then somehow, some way, it's going to build to a triple threat Shield match for the championship at WrestleMania 33, and Ambrose will leave as the undisputed champion, and that'll be his start along his journey to being, and staying in the upper echelon along with Reigns and Rollins, where they've already ascended to.
If that's the case, they need to start that journey now.
Well, they already are. They've already started it. He's in a fantastic feud with Kevin Owens, which, if I had my druthers, would conclude at WrestleMania, in a sense, but would conclude at WrestleMania in a what do they call it? A Three Stages of Hell match. I think they're doing a great job building that feud right now, and I wish WWE would have the patience to have the feud last for 6 months, because it would be 6 months if it went to WrestleMania. And through WrestleMania. I actually kind of laid out a plan. I don't remember if we talked about it on the air or we talked about it off air, where Ambrose and Owens would actually have a feud off and on until Money in the Bank 2017, and that Ambrose would actually end up winning the championship on that show. And when I laid it out for you, you were like, well, that'd be amazing. But I think it would be as well. But at the same time, I do think that we're likely to see at least one new world champion this year, a guy that has never held the world championship before. His name is Kevin Owens. I think next year is probably more likely to be at WrestleMania to be Ambrose's time to get that championship, because they'll spend this year building him up to it, like they spent 2015 building Rollins as the champion and building Reigns up to the championship. They'll use this year to move Ambrose from Intercontinental title contention and champion and level to by the time that 2017 starts, he will be far and away the clear favorite to be the champion into the future of next year.
And I hope that it's true. I have the kind of faith, I guess, in the way the WWE has been recently. And that being said, moving on to some of the other people that have been so misused over the last couple of years, Neville, for one. I don't know that anybody came out of NXT as hot as Neville did. Between maybe the last people that did was the Shield, but Neville came out of NXT with such a vibe and probably the hottest person on the planet. To be now, what is he, a curtain jerker with Stardust? And I mean, Stardust there, that's another travesty, but that's a whole nother travesty on another level, where I don't understand why Cody Rhodes is pushed down to the level he is. I don't understand Damien Sandow and the fact that twice now, 2 times, he has gotten over with the fans. And both times he's gotten over, they've pushed him down. This feud that when he was Damien Mizdow, the feud that he had with the Miz and pulling that into the way that it ended, ending at WrestleMania, WrestleMania with the slap and throwing Miz out of the ring, and then having them a couple of very, very brief matches on Raw where Miz won them both. It didn't do the Miz any good, obviously, because the Miz is still stuck in no man's land. But then also, it just buried Sandow again. Sandow hasn't even been on TV since that happened, until this new Social Outcast. No, he's not even part of the Social Outcast. He's still not back on TV. But then you also have Bo Dallas, who was amazing in NXT, comes up to the main roster and is nothing. You've got, look what they've done with the Wyatt family, who should be, I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't be the type of stable that has all the gold, and they're being pushed down to losing to the Geriatric brothers. And I don't know that they know how to handle the talent that they have, and that kind of makes me wish that NXT was its own brand, that it wasn't a training ground for the main roster, that it was its own thing. And you had people that came into it and stayed there. Kevin Owens stayed there, Neville stayed there, Bo Dallas stayed there, and they did their thing down there. And I can guarantee that if they had stayed there and were doing their thing, you'd have more people watching NXT than you would Raw.
That's probably true. I can foresee a day where NXT is more of a brand extension like SmackDown was for quite a while, rather than being a developmental brand for WWE. I could even see where superstars rotate between the two of them like they did for Raw and SmackDown. I just hope that if that is the case, that we won't see it become like SmackDown did, where it's kind of like, the B show. I really liked it in 2002 to 2005, where we had separated rosters for the two brands, and SmackDown most of the time was actually a better wrestling show than Raw was. Raw was the entertainment show, SmackDown was the wrestling show.
And the reason behind that the reason for that was because Paul Heyman was in charge.
Well, for a bit of it, he was, not for all of that. But yeah, I mean, he definitely laid the groundwork for it to work that way. And NXT being controlled by Triple H, who I think is another great wrestling mind, and of course William Regal, who's a great wrestling mind, has worked really well, because it's only a 1-hour show. It's almost like a wrestling challenge or a Superstars at times, where there are some jobber matches on there, but then there's always 1 or 2 big time matches on there as well. I really enjoy the format of that show. I like only having 1 hour a week to carry along with it. I mean, that's one reason why I don't follow Raw and SmackDown as much as I used to, because I just don't have the 5 hours to devote to those shows anymore. Even watching it on Hulu, it's still 3 hours, and just the 1 hour of NXT to me is better. I'd rather, it's easier to follow the main roster, although because of everything that's been going on with Roman Reigns and watching his build and watching the championship, of course, actually change hands on Raw and be defended now twice, I believe, by him on Raw. it's been something I've actually kind of been following more or less on Hulu, because at least then I only have to watch like an hour and 25 minutes instead of watching 3 hours, or fast forwarding through a bunch of crap I don't want to see. Um, Raw was better when it was an hour. It was better when it was 2 hours, and now that it's 3 hours, it's almost intolerable. That's one thing that NXT has going for it, in my opinion, is that their roster is such that they can get these guys over and keep them relevant. Only wrestling maybe a couple of times a month, because they only have 1 hour show, and you don't have time for them to to escape your imagination that they're not there on each show.
And I think we talked about that one other time about how we would like to see them scale back. Maybe scale back to SmackDown being like ECW was, just an hour-long show, and maybe Raw being 2 hours, not having the brand extensions again, where you've only got John Cena appearing on Raw, and Randy Orton, he's only on SmackDown. You have to watch SmackDown to see him, and so that it spreads them out a little bit, and then we can also cut back a little bit, 6 or 4 even, on pay-per-views, so that you can build stories over years.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just spreading out the talent. It's also the fact that if a talent is only on one show, you have to focus on them on that one show to get them over. You can't just think, oh, we'll just carry the storyline over onto SmackDown, or we'll just make SmackDown a show that nobody's going to care about. No, if you want to have those characters be developed, you have to actually do some character development for them, and having them on a separate show than Raw forces you to do that.
Well, yeah, and it also spreads them out, so you don't see them 3 times a week too. And so I can pretty much guarantee that if over the last 5 years we'd only had John Cena on Raw, and only 4 or 5 pay-per-views a year, I don't think people would be as sick of John Cena as they are right now.
Absolutely not.
They're overexposed to him. They see him too much, and it just happens with everybody. You just get to a point where it's like, okay, I've seen John Cena come back against impossible odds now 5 times this month. And the fact that you have, I miss the days when the world champion only defended the title on pay-per-views. You had to wait 4 months to see him defend the title. He didn't wrestle on the other shows. He made
it'd be on Saturday Night's Main Event every 6 weeks, and then on the pay-per-views he may or may not defend the title. I mean, how many SummerSlams in a row did we go where the main event was a tag team match?
Well, exactly. I mean, you didn't. They did the world title a lot like boxing does and the UFC does, where there wasn't a championship match every weekend, or every week, or every month. They spread it out. They made it more realistic, and you had better builds to stories. You had better builds to that title. So then when somebody came in and won the title, it felt like it meant something.
That's actually what I loved about Brock Lesnar being the champion. Towards the end of last year, beginning I should say towards the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, is him having his contract structured the way that it was, meant that he wasn't going to be there all the time, and it felt like an event not only when he showed up, but obviously when he defended the championship, because he wasn't defending it all the time, and it felt special to have the champion around, which it does not on a regular basis.
Right, and I think that's a lot of the reason why we got sick. I mean, the weekly shows, that's for your Intercontinental title, that's for your tag team titles. Those are the ones that should be defended on weekly shows, or even not defended.
And that's why John Cena got so much praise for his U.S. title defenses, his U.S. title open challenges, because he made that into basically a TV championship,
which is what it should have been. And it sounds like we're going to have to roll into a part 2, because we still have to talk about AJ Styles and the Baylor Club, as they're calling it, and I still got some more thoughts on the whole WWE and everything too.
And we also want to say what we would like to see for WrestleMania, not necessarily what we predict we're going to see, but what we would want to see in a perfect world. So that's what we'll talk about on part 2. For now, that's all we've got. We'll try to do better in part 2.